to the beginning, and this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, that just came up.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we got to punch continue, I guess. Okay. So
yeah, that's what I've done. That. Sorry, say the question again. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So can you take us back to the beginning and tell us how Jasper Fforde became a novelist, and how Jasper Fforde became this novelist?
Wow, what a question. That's like a whole hour, 2 hours in itself. I fell into writing accidentally. I never set out to be an author. That was actually the last thing on my mind. Until the age of 27, I thought writing was something that other people did, that I couldn't do it because I didn't have the necessary training, the necessary, cleverness, a way with words, nothing like that. It was something that other people did. And I just sort of stumbled into it quite by accident. And I was writing a short story as a treatment for a film script that I was trying to write because I wanted to be a movie maker. And I've always been attracted to story and sort of came in through this other way, through movies. And then I found writing this short story that I actually really liked writing. And I thought maybe I could do it. The words seemed to fall onto the page in a kind of way that made sense to me. And I went, this is kind of working. And then it was a question of just having this newfound passion and this great love of writing and storytelling. And instead of sort of becoming a movie maker as I wanted, I suddenly realized that I could actually tell stories on my own, that I didn't need a film set. I didn't need actors. I didn't need anything. All I needed was me and a laptop and my imagination and, these 26 letters of the alphabet and 7 different types of punctuation. And you can just do so much of that with like the building blocks of story. And it took me 13 years to get published. All authors have that kind of story, or most authors have that kind of story. And along that way, it was me discovering writing. And it wasn't, I didn't come through the sort of going to writing workshops. I didn't have go to writing self-help classes. I didn't do anything like that at all. I just sat in my office and wrote. And I think in that process, it was a kind of, I wouldn't say inspired is the wrong kind of word, but kind of inspired ignorance that I didn't know what I was doing. And when you don't know what you're doing and you're discovering things afresh and anew, then there are all sorts of interesting directions you can take. And I think that's how I ended up with this very strange, slightly off-kilter way of looking at my writing, with all these bizarre ideas, which I try to make, fantastical ideas that I try to make ordinary and sort of ho-hum. And I think that's how I ended up this way, just through accident and just sort of exploring the written word in my own sort of rather strange, unique way.
Wow.
Thank you.
Roula? Amazing. That's amazing. And I read somewhere that your first work was rejected 76 times before finally becoming a New York Times bestseller. Wow.
Yeah. 76 times over 10 years is not massive, to be honest. That's like 7.5 times a year.
It kept going, so it didn't really stop you.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point, because we'll be presumably writers listening, is that I didn't set out to write to be published, although that obviously is in your head because you want to make it your work, because that's what I think about sort of, a career or whatever, is you find out what you like doing and then try and monetize it in some way. So although writing for cash was kind of obviously in the background, it wasn't the main reason for writing. And I was writing because I loved it. And when you do something because you love it, you have a kind of, the sort of innate passion to what you're doing. And then when you get the rejections, it's not like, I'm going to stop doing it, or I'm going to sit in a dark room, with cow dung on my head and, saffron. I won't do any of that. I'll just go and write another book, because they're rejecting that book. They're not saying, Jasper, you're the worst human being on the planet. Never write. We will pay you to not write. Your writing is so bad. They're not saying that. What they're saying is, this book is not what we want. And I was kind of thinking long term, well, if this one doesn't work, then the next one will work. And if that one doesn't work, the one after that works. And I think a lot of authors will tell you a very similar thing, because most of us have like 6 or 7 books under our belt before we get published, is it's you're learning your craft. You really are. You're learning your craft. And if you can go from the rejection of your 5th novel to starting your 6th with no loss of enthusiasm, then you have what it takes to kind of to carry on and have a career in writing. Because if you write one book and you just give up when someone says it's not very good, then that's kind of not how it works. You've really got to learn your craft, and you just got to bang, bang, bang away at it all the time. A lot of hours on the keyboard, a lot of hours. But just keep going. I just loved it.
Wow. And then you say it's learning craft. So did you find yourself developing a specific kind of writing process? So do you have a specific writing process, any specific writing rituals or habits? How do you overcome writer's block? Do you ever have writer's block, or is it, the fact that you just write it out, it kind of stops you from getting it?
I have had writer's block. That's pretty horrible. No, I mean, generally what I do is I have this theory called the narrative dare, right? A narrative dare. And what this means is you set yourself a little dare, right? So you set yourself a dare, and it might be something like Jane Eyre has been kidnapped out of Jane Eyre, and somebody has to get her back, right? That's the narrative dare. Or it's Humpty Dumpty didn't fall, he was murdered, right? We need someone to investigate this and find the truth. There's your narrative dare. Write a book about a thriller set in a world in which humans have always hibernated. The important word there being always. So what you do is you have your narrative dare, and then you go, okay, what am I going to do? You throw yourself into this like bear pit, and then you have to somehow sort of clamber your way out. And because it's a narrative dare, you're not allowed to let yourself off the hook. So although the ideas are very silly sometimes, you don't want them to be stupid, because stupid is bad, silly is good, stupid bad. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to tell a story within the parameters of your narrative dare that makes sense. And whilst you're going down that journey, whilst you're moving down that corridor, opening doors and figure out what's working, then new possible things can actually pop up in front of you almost out of necessity. So doing the book about Jane Eyre being kidnapped, the first thing to say is, okay, well, what kind of a world is this? Because it's obviously a bit of a strange world, but it has to be a world in which people really, really like literature. And they're really concerned that Jane Eyre has been kidnapped out of Jane Eyre, because it's told in the first person narrative. And if she's kidnapped, then it's completely blank from the page 200 onwards. So I have an alternative world where people really love literature. And then I thought, okay, maybe we have a policing agency, right? And then, okay, what is this policing agency? Who's in it? How does this work? What kind of world is it? And all of a sudden you're creating this huge kind of, event horizon out of this very, very small individual idea that just sparks off and echoes outwards. And I think I love that process. I love that process. I was writing a book about giant anthropomorphized rabbits, and that's the narrative dare. There's 1.2 million anthropomorphized rabbits in the UK, and the government has decided they need to be rehomed in Wales. And then everything just starts sparking off that. Why are they there? Who are they there? What relationship do they have with humans? And as you ask yourself all these questions, all the drama starts appearing. Because the wonderful thing I love about the fantasy genre or the sci-fi genre, or any of those genres really, which are sort of fantasy worlds or fantastic worlds made real, is that you can have potentially new ways of telling drama, new ways of using drama, which I think is, a really exciting place to be. So it seems to have worked for me, but I've really kind of never done it any different, to be honest.
Wow, that's incredible.
I want to follow up on that a little bit and talk a little bit more about the worlds that you've created. Now, I don't want to get all gushy, but I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I love everything about the books. I love the characters, the plotting, the humor, the dialogue. But I think the part that really impresses me the most about what you've been doing is, in fact, the world building, which is extensive and carefully developed, but never obtrusive. So here's the question. do all of these worlds that you write about exist inside the same larger Fordian reality? Or do any of them coexist in time? Or does each of them
Ah,
occupy a completely separate universe? Can you talk about that for a bit?
yeah. So the Jasper verse. I think they're separate. I mean, this is actually a question that comes up every now and again. I try and keep them separate. Because otherwise it's kind of complicated. I think the nursery crime series is in the same world as the Thursday Next series, and there is a bit of crossover between the two of them. But for the rest of them, I think they're very unique worlds to themselves, and I don't merge them, because then the thing about writing a fantasy world, in which your characters obviously, it's only a canvas, right? It can only ever be a canvas. The primary things in a story obviously are the people and the interactions, between the people and and their environment. So a world that one creates has to have its own internal logic, and that internal logic has to be absolutely spot on. And sometimes it's immensely complex and subtle. And this is great because readers totally buy into this, and it's absolutely wonderful. I'm always bowled over just by how flexible readers' minds are to the to the infinite of creating alternative worlds. And because they're so subtle, they have to be their own little world. Otherwise, new rules would have to apply, in this sort of grand unifying Jasperverse theory to make things fit together. And the Early Riser book can't exist within the universe of the Constant Rabbit. They're just completely, they just doesn't work. And it would be too much sort of narrative gymnastics to try and actually make them all work. So not really, other than that they're all in my head. And on the page now, of course, there's no real linking factor between them, I don't think.
Thank you. Roula? You're muted, Roula.
Sorry. About the Constant Rabbit, I love the book, and I found it to be very socio-political, reflective of the world today, and at the same time, it was quite funny. Am I right? Given the messages about the environment, racism, and life on this planet in general, would you categorize the Constant Rabbit as a satire, or fantasy, or sci-fi, or even climate fiction? Or all of these?
I think all of them really. I'd put it in sort of human allegory, allegorical fiction, perhaps. Well, allegorical is pretty much fiction. I think it is, yeah, and it's just very reflective of what I've been seeing going on around me, and structural prejudice that exists in so many places on this planet, and it was really me as well with the things that have been going in the UK, of which I don't agree, such as Brexit, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it was really me just sort of writing, I think, probably not only my most serious books, although this isn't new territory. I mean, I've used these sort of themes before. I think it's my most overtly serious book. And it was just an attempt to me to sort of just say, look, we're doing this so wrong, this is so wrong, and using the idea of rabbits as this as how did I describe it, as the demonized other, just allowed for a lot of jokes as well, and silliness, which is a kind of funny and kind of shocking sometimes at the same time. And it was a book that I was kind of weirdly worried about writing. I don't know why, but I was kind of weirdly worried about writing. And I was thinking, is the tone correct? You've got this, very, very strong thing about discrimination, and about the rabbits, saying to us, like, who put you in charge of the planet? What are you doing? You're crazy. Why are you doing this? Doesn't make any sense at all. And I was kind of thinking, well, can you have that sort of tragedy and comedy at the same time? Because it is very silly, and it's also very serious. And I was chatting to someone, and they said, well, MASH, the TV series, is actually a very good example of how you can use, a comedy and then tragedy very, very quickly, changing between the two. And yeah, and it's all very, very funny. MASH is a very, very funny. It's a comedy show, yet it's also very serious, because as soon as, you know, the helicopter's incoming wounded, then all of a sudden it's very, very serious because people are dying. So I think there is room for that. I mean, there's room for everything in writing, but it was just me sort of trying to put into words what I think, and also what I've learned, you know, being you know, British and looking like I do over the last 60 years, and the changes that I've seen and the changes I suppose I'd like to see.
It's just an amazing balance between serious and funny, and it's very unique in you know, relaying all these messages to the readers, but in a funny way. I mean, it's really, really engaging. I loved it.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. No, I like it too. It's my favorite book. It's the book I'm most proud of, perhaps. That's the best way to say it. I think it did everything I wanted to do in the book, and it was all kind of there.
Time. I mean, we can't wait until the next one is out, which you might want to tell us about later.
Yeah.
Josh?
Thank you. When Jasper, when Roula invited me to co-host this session with her, I thought, well, okay, I have to ask some questions that an audience of dozens of people will want to hear the answers to. But I thought she's also given me the opportunity to ask you something that I really want to hear the answer to. And I may be the only one, but if you don't mind, I'm going to just kind of go into the weeds a little bit here for a moment. I will tell you that the character name Thursday Next is one of my 3 favorite character names in all of fiction, with the other 2 being Douglas Adams' Ford Prefect and C.S. Lewis's Eustace Clarence Scrub. Now, Thursday Next was the first book in your first series, and that book, The Air Affair, which you mentioned earlier, also has some other just classic character names. Paige Turner, what a wonderful name. Braxton Hicks, which is a magnificent name. Millen DeFloss, who's not actually a character in the book, but contributes some bits and pieces at the beginnings of some of the chapters. And then, of course, Jack Shit. Marvelous names. Could you talk to us about what goes on in your head when you're naming your characters?
I think then I don't know whether I'd certainly do those sort of names in Thursday Next book, but I haven't done it so much in subsequent books, because I think it can be a little bit distracting, and I think maybe readers will sort of might think it's a bit too silly. But when I was writing that, when I was like 30, when I was writing it, I was just playing with this long tradition of silly names in British fiction. You know, Dickens, you know, did it for years and years and years. He always had really, really good names. And I was just sort of carrying on that, and some Jonathan Swift as well. And there's lots of people, you know, with silly names. So I just thought I'd kind of do it. So when I was writing in the early days of The Air Affair, I think even before it was called The Air Affair, and I knew I wanted a female protagonist, because I've already written 2 books. So The Air Affair was my 3rd book, right? I'd already written the 2 nursery crimes. They were the first 2 books I ever wrote, although they were published as number 5 and number 6. And I had a list of names that I really, really liked that I wanted to use. I wanted to use this, you know, silly punning names as a kind of motif in my writing. And Thursday Next was just there. And it's a great name. I really like it, because it could be a name, but sort of not. And it has an internal rhythm to it. De-dum, Thursday Next, you know, and that's quite nice. Bowden Cable, that's another, I think, a really nice name that I really like. The Bowden Cable is actually those on a bicycle brakes, you know, that sleeved cable. That's a Bowden Cable designed by Frank Bowden, you know, in the sort of 1890s. And when I saw words like that, like Bowden Cable, I thought, yeah, that's just a great name. I can really use it. So that was what I was doing. Interestingly, the Paige Turner name, that was such a bad pun, even for me, that I actually had to hide it. So she's either known as Turner or Paige throughout the entire book, and then right at the end, I think on about third page from the end, I put them together. And if you hadn't seen it by then, you've been punned by stealth, and that's on you. You know, that's my trump. So sometimes, you know, they're just too much, and other times they're really subtle, and a lot of people don't pick them up, because Landon Park Lane, which is kind of posh British name, for the US audience would be Landon Park Place, because it's what you do when you shake a 4 on the Monopoly board. You land on Park Place, or you land on, as I do, land on Park Lane. So his mother and father were called Bilden and Howson, because Bilden Park Lane and Bilden Howson Park Lane. So some of them are like little internal sort of jokes to myself, sort of, and I still put those in, little references here, little Easter eggs, just to sort of throw them in there and just to amuse me and anyone who picks up on them. Because if you pick up on an Easter egg, and I've noticed this before about, you know, finding them myself in either in movies or in books, is that when you find an Easter egg that's really esoteric, you know it's only for you. You know, this is between you and the author, and you have a special bond, and that's a wonderful, sweet thing to have. So a lot of them are really esoteric, and I just bung them in there. Someone will get it, and they do, hopefully. But that's why the names. But less these days. I do it less these days. But if I came back to the Thursday Next books, as I will with TN8, there'll be a whole plethora of good books. Just to give you a sneak preview, her sort of partner in crime in the next one, they're a sort of duo. You know, it's Thursday Next, and her partner is someone called Roger That. That spelled THATT. And I just think that's Roger That. It's just a great name, Thursday Next and Roger That. It just makes total logical sense within the Thursday Next world. You know, everyone has silly names and no one seems to comment on it.
I can't wait.
It sounds great. And I mean, talking of the characters, their names, and the characters themselves, I mean, they're so lifelike in a world of fantasy. I've asked this before to other sci-fi writers. I've asked them how real their characters were to them. And almost all the time, the answer was, oh, they are real. They are very real. So do you feel the same way about your characters? And do you feel that you'd like to meet any of them in this world?
Yeah, they probably wouldn't like me very much. I don't think, because of, you know, everything. I mean, I'm not sure Thursday Next would really want to meet me, and if maybe she would, but I wouldn't want to meet her. And it's like, oh God, you know, sorry about all that stuff I did. And it's like, you did it, you were the one. You know, I saw you, you know, like that. I got you, Ford. They are kind of real. It's a kind of weird way that they are real. In that when you start writing them, they kind of write themselves. Thursday writes herself because I know her really well. When you're writing characters, you do in the end kind of speak in their own voice. You know how they're going to talk. In this one, that's not the cover. I'll just show you. In the Great Troll War. Don't know if you see that. Yeah, the Great Troll War. That's coming out in September. I actually got a chance to appear in the book myself. I thought, you know, I write all these characters and situations. Why shouldn't I get like a walk-on part? I want a cameo. You know, I'm the author. I can do what I want. So I actually put myself in the book, and it's quite fun because it's like, what would you do and say if you found yourself in your own book? So that was it's a version of me, but it is kind of recognizably me. And all of a sudden, I'm writing a character that I do know very well because it's me, and my other characters talking to me. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, they are pretty real, I must say. Although oddly, I don't really know what they look like. I don't kind of know what Thursday looks like, but readers, I find, have a very, very clear idea of what my characters look like, which is kind of interesting. It's
pretty cool. Yeah. Isn't it sort of like the air affair when Thursday goes into Jane Eyre? Or I mean, is that the same as you being part of your own book? Do you feel like you're stepping into a well-known world for the first time? A well-known pop literary world. So is it like Thursday Next in the Air Affair? How, you know, she goes into the world of Jane Eyre and
I think it is. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like that. And I'm actually, when I writing series books is great fun because a lot of the time you're revisiting very familiar places, and it's like, you know, hanging out with friends. So it's actually great fun to do. But then actually doing standalone books is great fun too, because then you're just making up new stuff, which is also, you know, very exciting. So going into the books that Thursday goes into is actually great fun, because they're books that I know quite well, like, you know, like The Air Affair, and a lot of them I know quite well. So I can actually sort of go in there and say, right, you know, reread it. Let's see where Thursday actually comes in. Let's see how she can interact. Let's see how it all can work. And it's actually quite fun, sort of piecing it all together. So so you can actually make her interact. So if you were to reread Jane Eyre, you could say, okay, that's happened because, you know, Thursday made it happen. So in a weird way, you can actually sort of almost retell a story that was written, you know, 100, 150, 170 years ago. So there's a lot of fun to be had, I must say.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I have to confess, Jasper, that I had never read Jane Eyre until, I'm
that's
sorry,
all right.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But I have now, and the reason that I read it was for exactly that reason. Having read The Air Affair, I wanted to see how it connected to the book that gave it its birth and its wings. So thank you not only for your own books, but also for introducing me to some other books that I otherwise would not have read.
Well, that's no, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's really, really good. I mean, part of the whole Thursday Next series was about me trying to reclaim the classics away from academic study and rigor. And I think that's a great shame, because there are a lot of Shakespeare, people say it's not for them. You know, Jane Eyre, Dickens, you know, that stuff, you know, I studied it at school. And I was trying to sort of repossess that, if you like, say, no, let's take it back, because a lot of these were like really good, you know, really good writing. So so I'm really pleased that you said that. And that's a lot of other people have said, you know, that I came into your book and I left on a different train, you know, and because I'm mixing genres, and I have Western, I have sci-fi, I have all manner of genres all mixed in there, is that you can come in on, you know, I don't know, you could be in on crime or romance even, and then find yourself thinking, well, you know, why don't I try science fiction or something else, or even the classics, and go away on that. So in that respect, you know, I'm very pleased, because it broadens people's you know, choices in reading. So,
you know, nowadays it's almost a given that any author is going to have a website, and I've looked at a lot of them over the years, and I don't want to offend anybody, but most of them are actually kind of similar to each other and not particularly interesting. Yours is far and away the most fun website that I think any author has ever created. How much of that did you do yourself? How much time do you devote to it? How much is that you?
It's all either me or my wife who put it all together, and it's got over, I think it's got over 1,400 pages. I mean, you could go around my website and you could spend hours, days, and not read every single part of it. All I used to do is whenever I have a new book, I add more pages. I have like a mini website to do with the rabbits or early riser. And I just add to it, and I never take it away. It's all written on HTML, so it's a very oldie worldy looking website. It's how we used to look at websites in the 15, 20 years ago. And I think that's kind of fun, because all websites do look pretty much the same these days. And because the content never goes away, you can always go back and revisit it and find something new. I must say that recently, because the way in which humans use the internet has changed dramatically with social media, people don't go to it so much at all unless I signpost them from social media, or someone else signposts them from social media. And I should do that more, really, to sort of say, look, here's a website. But it is there. If anybody wants to, go through it and have a look, they can find things. But quite often I find that people are not, if they want to find out something, they'll go on Twitter and ask me. People no longer go to websites. People are directed towards websites. And I think it's changed a lot in recent years. So I don't do so much that I used to in the old days, when people just used to, go onto your website and see what new was there. It's kind of changed a bit now.
Well, given that it's all still there, I hope that people in the audience who have not yet had the pleasure of exploring it will check it out. You will thank, first of all, me for saying that, but second of all, Jasper for making it all happen, or maybe even first of all, Jasper.
It's some of it's very old and probably a little bit shaky, but we did put it to HTTPS, so it is now on a secure server, so there's no worries there. So yeah, enjoy. I mean, it's huge, and you could just delve and delve and delve, and not all of it is indexed, so you can find yourself going down rabbit holes of links that there are some pages which only have one link from another page on the website that only has one link going to it. So yeah, there's stuff there that you will never find, unless you actually go through every single page looking for it.
Well, I still go back to it from time to time, and I continue to find things I haven't seen before. There's an awful lot there.
Yeah.
Roula, over to you.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Early Riser. When I read it, it also struck me as a cli-fi or climate fiction. I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but was that what you had in mind, or one of the things that you had in mind?
Yeah,
it's planet and all that.
Yeah, it was. It kind of went in that direction. It began as I said, the narrative dare was write a thriller set in a world in which humans have always hibernated. But as it sort of morphed into the book that you see now, it was more, I think, perhaps humans facing extinction, and in my book, it's getting colder, and everyone is very worried about not global heating, but potentially species ending global sort of cooling. But that's not the thrust of the book. That's actually not what's, you can see it's going on, but people have their dramas just the same, whether people are just not surviving through the winter and the cold and everything. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know that cli-fi was a thing until I wrote Early Riser, and then all of a sudden I realized that cli-fi was a thing. So I think it does fit in there, but it's just I don't know quite how I'd categorize it. It's sort of an odd human drama with somebody trying to find themselves, Charlie, my protagonist, and they're trying to find themselves in a very sort of dangerous, confusing set of circumstances, and trying to find a place in which they belong. So I kind of like it, but I don't like it, because it was a book that took me like 3 or 4 years to write, and it shouldn't have done. And there was a lot of writer's block involved, and it sort of put me behind. I should now be on my 20th book. I shouldn't be on my 16th book. So it kind of put me a lot behind, and I lost a bit of momentum through it. But I'm back to a book a year now, so that's good. So I'm sort of over that hump. But I'll never look on that book fondly, because it was a kind of difficult.
It's a great book. I mean, it's one of my favorites.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the turning point for me. I mean, because the problem with books that are very difficult to write is you don't like them, right? And if you don't like a book and all you want to do is get it finished, then it's never going to work. You've got to like your book you're writing on, and you have to get to a point at which you're enjoying writing it. And for me, that was the turning point, is that I suddenly wanted it good rather than finished. And as soon as I wanted that, and I could see where this was going, I could see where Charlie was going, I could see the sort of person Charlie was, and the ambiguities around them, then all of a sudden it made sense to me. And all of a sudden I liked Charlie, I liked Fforde, I liked everybody in it, and it kind of worked. That was a turning point, but that took a long time. So I think I wrote about the original draft was actually twice as long, and it was this huge sort of vast sprawling epic that was just hideous. It was just like the worst book on the planet, but managed to, in the end, just sort of throw out the bits that didn't work.
More now, after that it came out, and well, we're still living in a pandemic. We can't really say we're post-pandemic yet, but the idea of hibernation and the idea of lockdown. Did you at any point make any parallels between the two?
Yeah, I must say I haven't actually until you mention it right now. Not really. I mean, I think for me, I mean, I've done night work. You know, people who work at night, it's different. There are different rules applied, and I was trying to sort of bring that kind of vibe to it. Certainly, you know, so people have been asking me, you know, do you have anything that you might write, you know, sort of post-pandemic? And I'm kind of thinking, not really. I think we want to just sort of not forget, obviously, because we need to be prepared for next time, because there will be a next time, and we do need to be more prepared. But I think yeah, I mean, perhaps it's my job actually to do different stuff to entertain that isn't anything to do with it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Josh?
Jasper, I didn't read it on paper. I didn't read it on the screen, but I just listened to the audiobook of Shades of Grey. The narrator.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, narrator does a marvelous job. But
Good.
When the book ended, and I pulled the earbuds out of my ear, what came out of my mouth was, "Damn you, Fforde," because although the book is self-contained and it works really well as a self-contained novel, for people who haven't read it or listened to it yet, it leaves a lot of open questions. And so I immediately, as soon as I finished it, I went to your website, and on your website, I found that there is a sequel, which is due out next year, and it's set both before something that happened that precedes the events of Shades of Grey, but also after the end of Shades of Grey. Now, I don't want you to spoil either the first book for people who haven't read it yet or the sequel for me, but what can you tell us about book 2? And is that going to be the end of it, or do you think there'll be more after book 2? And one more piece to the question. Are readers ever going to find out what the hell actually happened?
So Shades of Grey. This is a book set in a sort of it's a post-apocalyptic world in which society is based upon visual color. So the level of color that you can see decides where you are in the chromatocracy, as it's called. So it's a very sort of speculative, kind of weird book. And it was me just it was my 7th book. I'd done the 4 Thursday Next books. I'd done the 2 nursery crime books, and all those 6 books were basically predicated on stories you already knew, right? You know, they're either in classical fiction or in nursery rhymes. And for me, it was I should be writing my own novel here. And what am I going to do? And I thought of this idea about having this notion of abstract, because color is an abstract concept. You know, there is no color in the real world. It's only the way that our eyes and our minds react to it. So green doesn't exist in real world. It's just something we clothe the world with. And I kind of like that idea because, you know, color is, you know, vital importance to us. And I just thought, let's have base an entire society around visual color. So I was kind of really pushing the boat out when it came to imagination, speculation, and all that kind of stuff. And when I got to the end of the book, it was like, well, I should just really keep going, but I can't because they needed something to publish. And I just sort of did that terrible sort of X-Files thing: is the secret is out there, you know, the truth is out there, and I'm going to come back to it at a later date. And I thought I would very quickly, and I was all keyed up to, you know, get straight into doing the sequel. And it didn't sell at all well. It sold actually really badly. So I kind of put it on the back burner. But the interesting thing is that I think 80% of the emails that I receive from very generous readers have been in praise of Shades of Grey, because they haven't read anything quite like it, and it's bizarrely bizarre in ways that you can't explain, but does work. So I'm writing the sequel at the moment. That's what I was doing before I came out into my lovely garden here in Welsh Wales. And it's just taking up the story. I'm not sure there's going to be too much prequel. That was what I just wrote down. You know, you write things down, you know, prequel, sequel, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll kiss $10 goodbye, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's gonna, the way I'm writing it is the story just carries straight on. It's 2 weeks later. Everything that's happened, we just go straight into it. Jane and Edward, okay, they have to figure out, first of all, what is going on, right? There has to be something going on. What are the swans? Why are they so terrified of lightning? Why can't they go out at night? Why are they essentially the prisoners in a prison of which they are also the guards? You know, and why is it there? Why is this all happening? There has to be a logic to it, and there is. I mean, I was thinking of this when I was writing it. So it's really the first book is Edward's kind of Eddie discovering Jane and falling in love with Jane, and her basically either deciding that she won't kill him after all and that perhaps he might be useful, and she does kind of like him. And then the next book is really them figuring out what is going on, why are things like they are, what was the something that happened, why are the flak towers there, why are all these things, what is perpetualite, why are these things there? And I was thinking I could do it maybe in one book, just 2 books to finish the series, but I'm already about 50,000 words in, and we're nowhere near dealing with everything in the book. So it could be a third. So that's, sorry, you'll have to wait another 2 years, because this one's coming out next year. Thursday Next 8 is coming out the year after that, and then hopefully I'll do Shades of Grey 3 the year after that, and we can put that series to bed. But
I have to ask, Eddie and Jane, Edward Rochester and Jane Eyre, is that just a coincidence?
No, you got it there. It's just another one of those little Easter eggs. Yeah, there it is, Eddie and Jane. And also it fits in quite well because Eddie Russett's a good name, and she's Jane Grey, of course, from Lady Jane Grey. So it just kind of worked, you know. So sometimes these things drop in your lap. I had a sequence. I had a sequence in a book where Emma Hamilton, right, was chatting to Hamlet, right. The great thing about Thursday Next books, you can do that sort of stuff. It's great. You can take historical characters and you can mix them with fictional characters in the same time frame. And Emma Hamilton and Hamlet kind of clearly fancy one another, and they're sort of chatting away, and then they find that out they both have a best friend called Horatio, and it seems so perfect, yet that just completely dropped in my lap. And sometimes you get that with writing. It's just one of those wonderful sort of serendipitous moments where you go, yeah, that's really going to work, and they'll think I planned it, but I didn't. It just happened.
Oh, so it kind of takes you on its own path in a way.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Yeah, the writing itself, that it's what it takes you. So it's not like you plan it. It's not like you have to be specific. Yeah.
No planning at all. No, I have my narrative dare, and then I just start writing. I mean, that's really is the way I do it, and it can be very wasteful on time, because I can write an entire chapter about doing something that never gets used. And what I'm doing is I'm just exploring down an avenue. You know, I'm just taking this idea and running with it. And if it doesn't work, I don't use it. But if it does work, and it's an idea with legs, and it's going to go somewhere, and I have a nice little idea because of it, then I use it. But no, I have absolutely no plan at all, really. Even when I'm writing sequel books, I the Thursday Next series, there was no plan really. There's a couple of ideas, themes running through it. There was a Granny Next subplot that I kind of knew where it was going, but for the most part, no. I just go, right, what have I got? I mean, this one, I just to plug that one again. So the Great Troll War. This is number 4 of the Dragon Slayer series, and this was great fun for me because I had no idea where this series was going. So what I had to do was pick up all the threads in the previous 3 and go, right, who's the good person? Who's the shapeshifter? How can we use this character? How can we do this? What do we want to use? What do we don't want to use? And then you can suddenly sort of try and fix it. You're fixing it in post, basically. You're sorting it out, taking all the characters and the situations that you've been creating over the last 3 books with no real plan at all, and going, right, let's put it all together. This is where Jennifer Strange, my character, this is where she was always heading. Let's make that work. And I was actually very pleased by how that all fitted together. But yeah, I just make it up, really. It's much easier that way.
Wow. I mean, that's funny because, you just reminded me of my daughter, my 9-year-old daughter, who likes to write stories. And every time I ask her what the story she is writing is about, she tells me, I'll figure out when I start, or I'll let you know once I know. So it's you just let it take you.
We talk about the difference between plotters and pantsers, and so you are a classic example of a pantser. Writing by the seat of your pants.
I think I like it. I think it works really well, and it just gives you flexibility. I mean, on the hoof flexibility. If you want something if you don't like something, just change it. If an idea works better, even if the plot that you thought you were having, because often when you're doing seat of the pants writing, the actual plot doesn't present itself until sometimes quite late in the book, or the central theme of the book does not appear until quite late, or even the motive that makes the book work in a fundamental way arrives in the last week in writing. And having that flexibility to embrace the new good idea that appears, which is far better than the original idea you had, is something that really, really works, or it works for me. And if I've written an entire book and it's kind of almost finished, and I'm kind of thinking, yeah, it's kind of okay, but there's something missing, and then I think of a better idea, I'll just rewrite the whole book, just go straight through it again, and go, I'll be another 4 weeks. Let me get on with it, and I'll do that. Always use the new, better idea, because it's always gonna be better.
And you write a book per year, so that's your average speed. Do you find yourself overwriting? I mean, is it easier for you to write more than less?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I write more. I must say, with The Constant Rabbit and The Great Troll War, those were pretty close. I didn't do a lot of overwriting with those. I trimmed a little bit out. I think The Constant Rabbit came in at about maybe 125,000, and it's now down to 105 or something. But those 20,000 words, you can take 20,000 words out of a 120,000 word novel and not realize they've gone. I mean, it's that simple. But they weren't badly overwritten. They were pretty much what I wanted to do with them. But other books like Shades of Grey, Shades of Grey is much longer. That I took about 60,000 words out of that. And as I said with Early Riser, I cut that in half. That was well overwritten. I think it depends whether I kind of know what I'm doing or not. If I don't know what I'm doing and I'm having a bit of trouble, then I'll overwrite. But if I pretty much know where I am, and I knew where I wanted to be with The Constant Rabbit, I knew where I wanted to be with The Great Troll War, then it's easier, because there are sort of narrower parameters about where I want to be. So I think it depends, really. Yeah.
And it doesn't really break your heart or anything to remove 60,000 words from a manuscript, does it?
Oh no. Oh my God, no. It's what you're getting rid of is just like potential reader boredom. And there's nothing you would more want to remove from your book than that. I read it back to myself, and I go right back to the beginning, and I start rereading, because I do that quite often. I'll write for 10 days, and then I'll go, oh, that's pretty good, and then I'll go back to the beginning again and write it through again, and I'll have little ideas on the way and change things, and then I'll get back to that sort of the narrative horizon, and I'll keep on going for another 5 days, and then maybe come back to it. So there's this constant sort of rewriting. But when I am reading and I'm thinking, this is just a bit boring or a bit tricksy, or I'm trying to be over clever, or it's draggy on the eyes, and I'll just remove stuff. Even if I really like it, I'll just get rid of it, because boredom is your enemy. You want to keep your readers engaged. You do not want them to be bored, and you certainly don't want them to start skimming. That's the beginning of the end. So no, I'm very happy to get stuff out. Punchy, nice, pacey novels. I like pacey novels. Bang, 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 bang. You know, page turner. What happens next? Ooh, you know, exciting. That's what I enjoy.
Well, thank you. Josh, would you like to add anything else before we open the floor for questions and comments?
Well, let me just mention to people who are in the audience that I'm going to just assume that you've really enjoyed hearing Jasper, and there is coming up relatively soon, next month, another opportunity to spend some time with him. He is going to be one of the panelists appearing at an event called More Than Malice, which is an online version of an annual crime fiction conference, Malice Domestic, that generally happens in late April, early May in Bethesda, Maryland. This year, because of the pandemic, it's been moved online and moved out to July. And it's very reasonably priced, great fun. Jasper will be there. The way to find out more information about it is just either go to Malice Domestic, do a Google search on Malice Domestic, and you'll get all the information and the ability to register for that conference. I'll be there, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope to see you there as well.
Great.
Great. So we will take a look at the chat box and take some questions that haven't already been answered throughout the course of the discussion. And then after that, if anyone would like to use the mic to ask questions and to ask Jasper face-to-face, albeit online, then you could also do that. So the first question, Alfie Rowntree. Jasper, I can see Shades of Grey 2 on Nielsen with a publication date of August 2022. Is this confirmed or almost certain this time? Cannot wait to read.
Well, yes, barring any mishaps, this is when I want to get it out. I'm very keen to be doing the book a year. You know, that kind of works for me. It's a really nice thing to get into. And I'm keenly aware that a lot of people have waited over 10 years now to the sequel for Shades of Grey. So and apologies obviously for that. I should have written it, you know, years ago. So I think we're fairly good. I think like 40,000 words roughly. And I've got a deadline of December the 1st, which should be enough because it's a sequel book and I don't have to make up the world. The world is already there. I've had to reread the original Shades of Grey a couple of times, and when I'm writing it on my screen, I've got my manuscript here, and then I've got the Shades of Grey manuscript as well. So when I want a character like Lucy Oka, I'll just do a word search for Lucy, and then I'll read up everything about Lucy, and then when she appears, when she walks on, I suddenly know who she is, what she does, and you know the unanswered questions surrounding her character. So it's actually quite fun in that respect that I'm doing this. But actually, I've suddenly realised there are so many unanswered questions in Shades of Grey, and I'm trying to encompass as many of them as I possibly can in the second book. Yeah, so I'm pretty confident that it will be out next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper. There's a comment from Turkey. Turkey says, it's true, some very creative names. And then we've got Sarah Shell. Sarah says there was an 18th century grand tourist called Page Turner, Sir Gregory Page Turner.
Oh, right. I did not know that. How about that? So, yeah. But often when you write stuff, you discover that actually something like that has already happened, and then someone. I mean, interestingly, in the Thursday Next series, for instance, I wrote this sort of satirical thing all about cheese smuggling, and that because there was in the Thursday Next books, Wales is a socialist republic and England is a separate nation. And because of the tariff, the high cheese tariff, then there are these like cheese wars and cheese smugglers, and it's very dangerous business to get into, smuggling, really powerful rare cheeses across the border. But this is like daily news in quite a few nations around the world, Canada and the States, and cheese smuggling, because there are different tariffs, and this does actually happen. But I had no idea that was a thing, but it is. but it's kind of weird. And then I wrote about the Neanderthals quite a lot in the Thursday Next series, who I love. I adore the Neanderthals. They're great. It's because it examines what another species of human, because we are now the only species of human on this planet, but it wasn't always that case. There were others, and we became the dominant species, and there must be a reason for that, clearly. And I kind of like the Neanderthals because they're like humans, but they're not. They're they have no singular pronouns, so they never say I. They always say we. And they seem sort of hardwired for this kind of Marxism, which I quite like. But things that they enjoyed in my books that I wrote 15 years ago, for instance, they enjoy abstract art. You see, they go and look at Kandinsky exhibitions, and just stand there swaying and going ooh to themselves. And then I read a news story a couple of years ago where some Neanderthal art was discovered, and it was, yes, abstract. So sometimes these things just sort of turn out, being right, and I'm just plucking it out of the air. I'm not an expert on Neanderthals, but it's kind of nice when these things come true.
Wow, so we just learned a few new things, and he smells
yeah.
I didn't even know that existed.
So how about that? Yeah.
Well, next, Yvonne Rhodes says, Winsome and Loosum is one of my favorite name pairs.
Yeah.
And sorry, Jasper, you were saying.
Oh, no. I was just trying Winsome and Loosum. Yeah, there was, no, I can't remember it, but there's all sorts of characters that turn up, and by their names, they foreshadow the fact that they're going to be dying soon. Like, I think there was someone called Lamb and Slaughter, and all sorts of names like that. So when they turn up, you know instantly that they're not going to last very long. So sometimes you can play with names in that way. And I had a character called Red Herring. And if I'd had that in the first book, they would have been a red herring. But if I'd have them in the second or third book, when people understand the way I tell stories, the fact that she was called Red Herring would mean that she wasn't a red herring. And the fact that she was called Red Herring was the red herring, if you see what I mean. So you can actually have a lot of fun with the subtlety of storytelling, and also with reader expectation, because kind of people know how I tell stories now, and they're going, oh, I know what Jasper's going to do. And you go, ha, you don't know what I'm going to do, because I know that you think you know what I'm going to do. So I can just change things and move them around. And readers do like this. I found chatting to people is like, we want to be wrong-footed, but we wanted to be able to have figured it out. You had to have put all the clues there, but we like to be wrong-footed. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun.
Thank you. There's a question from Claudia, which I think you answered somehow. Do you base some characters' names off, or no, some characters, not names, some characters based on real people?
Oh yeah, real people. Yeah, this is quite an interesting one. Often characters are amalgams. They're made up of several characters. So when I'm creating a character, I think, well, or a character on a TV show or a movie or something, I'll take that part of it, and then I'll add that to another part, or maybe someone who's kind of real. And then quite often, I'll have 2 or 3 characters in a book, and then I'll put those 2 or 3 characters into one. Because if you've got 7 characters in a room all talking, it's very complicated. But if you can actually bring that down to 3 characters, then you can merge characters, and then they have several different facets to their character. So it's actually a really good way of making a more complex character, is writing 2 characters who are quite different and then have to merge them together. So that's quite fun. So I do often write about people that I know, but they never notice, right? They never notice, because we don't see ourselves, right, as other people see us, which is kind of weird and strange. So yeah, I put people, very obvious people, in my book, and they never noticed at all. So that's quite amusing. Yeah, but I have actually also put people in the book whom perhaps I was not on the fondest of terms with. And they didn't notice, because they wouldn't read my books, obviously, because they hate me. But people who know them and know me go, I know what you did there. And I go, really? I couldn't possibly comment. But there you go. You can do all kinds of awful things to people who you feel in some way you're not well disposed towards, shall we say, as an author.
Do you ever kill characters that look like, or that are like people that you don't really like in real life?
I've never killed anyone, I must say. I thought that was probably going a little too far. Yeah, killing characters off is you know, you have to take that you can't take that lightly when you're an author, because people do get very attached to characters, and you are kind of messing with people's emotions here. So yeah, you have to be kind of careful. So I'm always very careful with what I do. So I try not to do it gratuitously. You know, when I do it, it's someone has to go out with a good reason, and they have to really, you know, like take someone out with them or do something heroic whilst they're going. So I don't treat it lightly, I must say.
So it's different than crime mystery, but because you hear a lot of crime mystery writers saying, you know, that we do kill people that we don't really feel comfortable towards in real life. So we kind of have this alternative, I don't know, venting out to either kill them or punish them or torture them in any way through fiction. Yeah,
I just get a bit worried about my sort of inner motivations. Like, so, oh my God, do I really want to be? Do I want to be that kind of person?
Nice.
No, I'm not sure I do. I'm not sure I do. So
what do you think, Josh? I mean, you write crime mystery.
Yeah. Do you kill people you don't like?
Not fiction? Often, but occasionally I have done that. And I haven't always known I was doing it. I wrote a story once upon a time set on an island in Greece, and there's a killing that happens in the story. And at the time I was teaching for an overseas university program, and I had a terrible, horrible boss. And I realized, actually, I think somebody else pointed it out to me years later, that person I killed off in the story was my terrible, horrible boss. But I'll tell you what that conversation reminded me of, though, was a wonderful, he died a while ago, but a wonderful crime short story writer, Edward D. Hoke, who published almost 1,000 short stories during his lifetime. And
wow.
Ed was a mentor and a friend to me. And at one point, he was one of the jolliest people you'll ever meet in your life. Just a happy, lighthearted man. And I asked him how that connected, that he was murdering a person a day in his fiction, but so peaceful and happy in his real life. And he said, oh, you know, people piss me off all the time, and I just go home and kill them. And then I can be happy in my everyday life because they're dead now.
Yeah, I like that, I must say. I mean, it's interesting you touch upon there something that all authors find is that you write subconscious stuff into your books. And I've read stuff back later, and I'm going, oh my God, that is exactly what I was thinking of at the time, but I had no idea that I was putting it into the book. And this is good because the place you, and I'm sure you'll agree with me here, the place you want to be as an author is it's just like coming out intuitively. Because when you're training yourself to be an author or storytelling or anything, you're actually teaching yourself to do something without kind of really thinking. You know, like learning to drive or fly or anything like that. And I always find, and I think talking to a lot of writers, I find, you know, the best work comes out when you're not really thinking. You know, it just comes out and you go, no, that will do. You go, oh, that's good. That doesn't need editing. And so I think, you know, the subconscious stuff that pops out is often, you know, stuff that is actually quite valuable and really, you know, brings a whole lot more to the writing, you know, that you don't know you're doing.
You know, you'll hear writers who will say the book or the story wrote itself. And I wouldn't say it out loud, but my internal response to that is always, oh, bullshit. No book writes itself. A writer has to write the book. But where that comes from, yeah, I would agree with you. There's certainly a large part of it that comes from a place inside of us that maybe isn't a conscious place, but a place that just gives us a well of material that we can then just allow to trickle through our fingers onto the page.
Yeah. Someone was asking me about Constant Rabbit, and they're saying, you know, I never guessed, you know, how it would work out and everything. And I was really of the opinion I couldn't imagine the book being any different than it was, because you bring all the elements together. I don't see how else it could turn out. You know, as far as I'm concerned, that's a book that almost wrote itself. You know, once you set the parameters in play, then everything just sort of slots in behind it with a bit of invention and everything. So yeah, I think books do write themselves, but you have to have put you know, once you got the 20 or 30 years of writing that you've been doing, and then you've got these sort of themes that you want to explore, then, and you're very fixed in your head about those themes that you are exploring, then sometimes, yeah, I do feel that they do write themselves. So
I may have the person wrong, but what's in my head is that it might have been Hemingway who at one point was asked how long it took him to write such and such a book. And he said, it took me 20 years to write it, and then it took me 4 months to type
it. Yeah. Whistler was asked to do a drawing of someone, and he just did this sort of little sketch, like a doodle, and it took him like all of a minute, and then he said, there you go, that's like $500 or something, and they went, what, $500 for a minute? And he said, no, it wasn't for the minute, it was for the 40 years to learn how to do that in a minute. And I go, yeah, I can totally buy into that, totally.
Oh, we have a question from Ahmed Sharafuddin. Ahmed asks, does writing help to relieve stress in your life, especially these days?
Yeah, it's a great, actually, I think it's a great one for relieving stress. I think any creative endeavor is really good for relieving stress, or anything that can take you completely away from everything else, right? So when I'm writing, I am completely focused on my characters. There is nothing else in my world, absolutely nothing. I may have the music on, but I'm not really hearing it. The kids could be running around outside my office, but I'm not really hearing them. And when I'm working on the book, I'm completely 100% focused. And when the ideas are working and it's all coming and trotting along, it's actually it's a very satisfying sort of thing to do. And I think any endeavor that has an outcome or an ongoing outcome or a finish to it or a goal to it, where you have achieved something in that day or in that week or in that month or that year, I think is actually really, really helps with anxiety. So I have lots of things that I like to muck around with, but I think it just makes that at the end of the year or the end of the week or the end of the day, that you can sort of look to yourself and go, well, it's my personal situation perhaps here is not much better, but today I did that picture, or today I did that paragraph that actually turned out really well, and no one can take that away from me. I did that. Or if you've got a long-term project that takes a year to do in your spare time, then you've got, right, okay, the year hasn't been great for me, but I did that thing. I wrote that book, and maybe it's not 100% good, but it is my book, and I wrote it, and I did it, and that's mine. And all that other stuff doesn't matter. This is me, and this is what I did. So I think that sense of achievement that you get, goal achievement, I think is certainly very useful for me. Dealing with everything that's going on, and obviously I'm not immune to issues like the rest of us. Yeah, I would say it really helps a great deal.
There are some comments next before the questions. Alfie Rowntree says the audiobook is a great idea for rereading. I might do that soon myself in preparation.
Good.
Ruth Sturton says, I'm so pleased to hear that there's going to be more Shades of Grey. I adored the first one.
Great. Good.
Grace Topping, author Grace Topping. Hi, Grace. Grace Topping says, how do you keep the details from a series in mind to write the next book in the series?
Well, there's two ways of doing it. Either I'm writing the sequel I'm doing it every year. So with the first 4 Thursday books, that was quite easy because I was writing them sequentially. When I'm writing non-sequentially, like coming back to the Great Troll War with the Dragon Slayer books, then I had to reread the whole series. So I reread all the series, and there are 3 books in this, and they're about 70,000 words long. This is about 70,000, and I reread them all, and I made a few notes, but generally I sort of kept in my head. And then I thought, okay, where are we going from here? And then you sort of start doing it. And then, as I was saying earlier, you're always cross-referencing it with things that have happened in the previous book. So rereading the previous books to figure out where you're going. But essentially, it's a big juggling act. Doing a sequel to Shades of Grey is harder because there's so much going on. And then I'll reread a little bit of the original book, and I'll go, oh, I haven't mentioned that, or I haven't done that, or that would stop me saying one thing or doing another. But essentially, it's this huge juggling act where you just have to keep 20 balls in the air. And when I'm writing, I have to write. I can't write for like an hour, and then go away for 5 hours, and then another hour. I need big blocks of time. And the best writing for me is to be doing, like 10 days on a stretch, one day after another, bang, 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 which I can't often do because obviously, I have family and everything. And so if I can get 3 or 4 days hit at it, that works really, really well. Because often if I come back, say after the weekend, it could take me until Monday afternoon to get back into the book, because I have to sort of go, right, where was I? What was going on? And then read it, get back into it. So sometimes when I'm at the end of a book, when I'm very close to finishing a book, I will just keep on going every single day and won't stop through the weekends, everything. And I can do maybe 15, 16 days on the trot just to keep everything in my head, so it doesn't all fall out, because you're getting to that very critical stage at the end of the book where everything has to hold together. And if I leave it for a couple of days, I won't get back to it for another day. So I just try and keep it all in my head. Yeah.
Thank you, Jasper, and thank you, Grace. Grace Topping, as many of you may know, the author of the Laura Bishop Mystery Series. Grace will also be with us in a special session in October. So we're having this little literary Oktoberfest on Indelible Evenings, where we have crime mystery, vampire stories, anything with a Halloween theme. So we'll be having so many author sessions during that month. Sarah Shell, as a seat of the pants writer, what is the role of editing in your process?
It's kind of all editing, really. If I write a paragraph, I may not instantly go back and start editing it, but I will certainly be over it again. Just recently, because I had, what are we now? On Tuesday, I was writing yesterday, not massively productively yesterday. So I decided this morning to go back to the beginning of the manuscript again. I've kind of mentioned this slightly earlier. And then I'm just going through it, and I call it combing, right? Where you comb the manuscript, because hair always improves with combing. So I'm sort of going through and just trying to untangle all the knots. And as I'm doing that, I'm constantly doing the editing process, on a sort of small basis. And just before I stopped writing, before I came on here, I suddenly realized that actually this large chunk of narrative should be actually after something that happens next, if you see what I mean. So something happens and then something else happens, but actually I've got to switch those two over, and I'm going to have to tear them all out and then put them back together again and sort of plaster over the cracks. And that just means, another huge comb and an editing process. And as the book gets larger and larger, then that editing process becomes, obviously more and more as it goes on. And I'm constantly re-editing, changing, moving words around, thinking, well, that must be better, or I must be able to tell that better, or I must be able to tell a funnier joke, or there seems to be a missing detail that should be here and it isn't, and then I'll add it in. So it's constant editing. I don't sort of write the manuscript and then go, okay, go back to the beginning and go through it and sort of run a spell check over it, or just change a bit here and there. I'm constantly doing it. I'll write a paragraph and then I can edit it straight away, or remove it, because editing is removing as well. You're not just changing, you're removing. So constantly mucking around with the TypeScript, moving things around, shifting them around. So it's mostly editing, I must say.
Thank you. And we have a comment from also mystery writer Carol Pulio, author of the Black Hole and Time Travel Mysteries. Carol says, I'll be at More Than Malice. So
great.
Carol will also be with us in October. So there's more about this later. Thank you, Carol, for being here. And Tiffany Dion So great to hear the good news about Shades of Grey. It may be the only book I've hurled across the room in frustration at the end. I'm ready to get back into it. My absolute favorite.
Oh, great! Thank you, thank you. I hope it doesn't disappoint. Ah.
Oh, we have an interesting question by Dan Steves. Can Jasper talk about his approach to gender and early riser? How does gender work in that world?
In early riser. Okay, this is a good question actually, because Charlie, my protagonist, doesn't have a pronoun. It is as gender neutral pronouns, so we never discover what or who Charlie is, and this was something that kind of arrived fairly late in the day when I was getting to that process. If you were listening earlier about moving to enjoying the book rather than wanting it finished. And I suddenly thought there was an interesting ambiguity there, because there was the sort of chief antagonist in it is also, or the two antagonists in it have a very similar sort of duality to their characters, and I wanted to do it not obviously. I wanted to do it kind of under the radar. And there might be people now going, hang on, I read Early Riser and I didn't notice anything. I always thought Charlie was a bloke, or Charlie was a girl, or maybe neither. And you may have to go and reread it and read the story in a different way. But it was quite tricky writing it without making it obvious at all. I just wanted it completely under the radar so that you wouldn't know. And perhaps when you started reading the book, it could be, you could have had one idea and then you could change your mind or whatever. But the point is, it doesn't matter. That was the main thing. Charlie is Charlie, and Charlie is a wonderful character who does amazing things. And the ambiguity over Charlie's gender is completely incidental to the plot and what they do and how they do it. But it was interesting, I must say, a really interesting, exciting thing to do with a character. And I have actually had a lot of very positive feedback from about Charlie, and also about Fodder as well. So I think it's something I enjoyed writing about the book, but it was also something that came quite late in the day. I think there was another sort of idea I put in there, I think, is that we discover about 2/3 of the way in the book is that they're all speaking Welsh, which I quite enjoy. I just sort of threw that one in as well. But yeah, it is tricky to actually write a book without a gender pronoun and make it not obvious, and that was actually the challenge. Yeah. But it was good fun. I do like Charlie, I must say.
And that is a very fascinating point in the book as well.
Yeah.
We have another question from Sarah, Professor Sarah Shell. What do you love about Wales?
Well, everything really. I mean, I could sort of turn the camera around here. It's an area I grew up in, so I know it very well. I'm not actually born Welsh, but I've lived here for an awfully long time. So I kind of feel that I'll adopt the nationality. It's just a very lovely place to live. It's full of mountains and streams and greenness and very lovely national identity and character. And it's when you live here, it's emphatically not England. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, it's like Scotland. You go to Scotland, and Scotland is not the England. It's part of UK, but it's emphatically not England. But when you come to Wales, it's the same. It's emphatically not England. And unlike Scotland, which was an act of union, where they decided they would join together, Wales is a subjugated nation in 1215, which is an awfully long time to maintain your national character and identity, which has shown the resilience of the Welsh character. Which I like a great deal as well. So it's just a lovely place to live, I must say. I just really enjoy it here. I've lived here permanently for the last 22 years, but I've been here on and off for the last 55. So my adopted nation. Yeah.
I agree. Wales is really beautiful. So I've only been there once.
Lovely.
And,
Yeah. So there's always in all my books, there's always little nods to Wales. Visit Wales, not always raining, and most of my books will either be set there or will visit Wales at some point. So there's always a nod to Wales in many of my books.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting question. What is one story you wish you wrote?
Oh yeah. What, you mean someone else's story? I don't know. I mean, there's lots of. I mean, when you're an author, I mean, the thing that's most exciting is, and what excites you about other people's writing, is when you read ideas or you see ideas, or read ideas, or word constructions that you couldn't have done. That you could not have done, and that's very exciting, because it's like sort of touching the sort of touching kind of genius, is that when you read something like, I don't know, True Grit by Charles Portis. I mean, it's just such a fabulous book on so many different levels. And I read it and I go, this is, you're in the company of, of a great writer. And that's, of course, always something that it's nice to be in. It's like being in the company of a great pianist or a great painter or something like that. It's very, very satisfying to see skills that you don't have, and people with ideas that you couldn't have dreamt up. So I do like it. But on the flip side of that is that if I'm reading a book and it's not very good, then I'm it's straight out the window. I'm really not good at having any patience with books where I can see that I'm not in good hands. I will just give up. First chapter sometimes, first paragraph, often. I look at it and I go, no, this just is, I can see this being written. It's just, I don't like it, and that's it, it's gone. So it spoils it for you, being an author, sadly, but it can also make books shine with greater luster, because just how hard it is to get all that stuff on the page. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Thank you to all those who left questions in the chat box. We still have time for one more question. If somebody would like to use the mic.
A mic.
If there's anyone who would want to ask a question using the microphone rather than the chat box, now's your chance. Oh, well, we have a question in the chat box. Yvonne asks, why a dodo?
Why a dodo? Oh yeah, this is actually quite a good question. Why a dodo? Well, dodos are fun. I mean, they're good fun. They're quirky and unusual. And dodos appear in the Thursday Next series, because Thursday Next has a pet dodo called Pickwick, who's a bit sort of, well, just a bit daft, to be honest. Doesn't really do very much. Kind of falls off furniture, and it just does sort of dopey family pet kind of stuff. And originally Thursday had a pet cat called Elmo, which is a bit boring. And sometimes ideas like pets, you put them in as placeholders. You just write them in, but they don't have a character yet, or like a character of a mother or a character of a landlord or something. You just write them in, but they're placeholders. You haven't done anything with them yet. And Elmo was one of those. I wanted something to do with Thursday's pet, but didn't know what to do with it. And I was at the Natural History Museum in Oxford, and there at the time they had on display the only parts of a dodo that weren't bones, right? So it's a very shriveled head and a very shriveled little foot, right? And they're usually on display there. And I just happened to wander into the museum, and they said that they'd been taken away for DNA analysis, right? And I went, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. So I went up to the girl at the desk, selling postcards and things like that at the gift shop. And I said, do you do dodo home cloning kits? Just sort of put her on the spot, see what she said. And she said, oh yeah, no, come back in a couple of years. Yeah, we should have some of them. And I went home, and my mind was clicking over, and I suddenly thought, yeah, why doesn't Thursday have a dodo, a pet dodo that was cloned back from extinction in a home cloning kit? Because this technology is very far advanced in Thursday's world. And of course, this opened the door to not only having a dodo, because all of a sudden I could have a dodo, because there was a rationale behind it, but then I could have mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and then Neanderthals, which again was a really great subplot. So that one visit to Oxford Natural History Museum kicked off not only a dodo, but also the Neanderthals. And that's how writing works. You know, you just have these ideas and you think, perfect, a dodo. And that's why a dodo. Simple.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. I'm afraid we're running out of time for questions. So
Okay.
I would like to thank you, Jasper, so much for being here. We know
Thank
that
you.
you have a very busy schedule, so thank you so much. It was such a fun session, and we hope to see you again in another Indelible Evening. For those of you who are not following Jasper Fforde on Instagram, it's at Jasper Fforde, and the same, I believe, goes for Twitter.
Yep.
Josh, thank you so much for being a wonderful co-host today. You
Pleasure.
can also find Josh on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well. So again, it's at Josh Pachter. For those of you who would like to follow Indelible and stay in the loop of things and get regular updates on the latest events, well, here is I'm trying to post it here. Yeah. So Twitter and Facebook, it's at Indelible Lit. Instagram, it's Indelible_literary_journal. Now, issue number 5 will be out this Saturday, and it will be during a launch event on Saturday and Sunday. The event will be at 6 p.m. London time. 3 p.m. London time, which is 6 p.m. here in Dubai. And EST, I believe it's 10, Josh? Is that 10 o'clock for you?
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock Eastern
Yeah,
time.
10 o'clock EST. PST, it's going to be a bit early, so it's around 7 a.m. So if you're joining us from California, you have to be an early riser. So again, I'm here. So we will be having the first day, the 26th, we will have presentations on the prose and the artwork that will be featured in the journal. Josh will be talking about his short story in the journal. We will also have author Maria Donovan talking about her novel, The Chicken Soup Murder. We will have Kara Kardashian. By the way, the theme is food and nurture. So there's a lot of artistic takes on food in this new issue. So there's also mystery writing on food by Pierre Kardashian. Mark Comerford, a chef and food blogger, will be talking about some food crisis issues around the world. Gilare Hoyi will be talking about food disorders. So this is the nonfiction part. Erica Pasquale is an artist, a food artist. They also will be showing us some of his artwork, and Lorette Luzajic will also be showing us some food photography. The cover art will be done by Jolanda Stockermans, who is very famous for her her meal preps, her artistic meal preps. So she will also be talking about her work on the 26th. On the 27th, we will have some poetry readings, some really interesting poetry readings by Ruth Cadell, Claude Barbary, Lucy Holm, D.R. James, Paul Jones, Gerald Mora, Hedi Habra, Maura High, Gottfried M. Hoyer, Omar Sabbagh, Ralph Earl, Deborah Kaufman, Florence Nash, and me, if I get the time. So we hope to see you all there. The link is already available on Instagram and Facebook and all our social media channels. So again, this was a wonderful session. Thank you so much, Jasper. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And we are greatly looking forward to reading your next novel. So you're saying there might be 3 shades of gray, right?
Maybe, not sure,
okay.
Not sure, okay. But just one at a time, and yeah. But there won't be the wait. There won't be the 10-year wait. That's what I'm saying.
Well, we're really looking forward to the second one then.
Good. Yeah, me too. Yeah, thank you very much, Josh. Thank you so much. Roula, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jasper and Roula and everybody.
Been a lot of fun. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Or day.
Bye.
Bye.